Welcome to The Explainer. So today, we're going to dive into a pretty radical philosophy for societal change that's been making some serious waves online. It's called Supercedence, and its whole deal is laid out in this really powerful manifesto that argues for a completely different way of thinking about our future. Okay, let's just jump right in with the opening line from the source material. This is not a gentle warm-up. It's a diagnosis right off the bat. It sets this incredibly urgent tone, framing the entire conversation around one core idea. The world we've been handed is, well, fundamentally cracking at the seams.
So the Declaration kicks off by detailing what it calls this present condition. It argues that we're not just dealing with a few separate problems, but a whole cascade of interconnected failures that are actually picking up speed, what it calls an accelerating crisis.
And yeah, the sources paint a pretty stark picture here. Our current political and economic institutions, they're described as monuments to inertia, just totally outmatched by the very crises they helped create. The main point is that these systems were designed for a totally different time, a past that's long gone, and they are just fundamentally mismatched for the world we actually live in today.
So if just patching up the old systems is a complete dead end, and the whole cycle of revolution just leads us back into the same old traps, what's left? This is the huge question the Declaration poses right before it offers its own very different answer.
All right, let's get into why the manifesto argues that our two standard playbooks for change, reform and revolution, are actually part of the problem. It presents them as this false choice that just keeps us all stuck.
Now, what's really fascinating here is how it frames both of these options. Reform, that's seen as way too slow, basically just begging the broken system to be a little less broken. And revolution? Well, it's more dramatic for sure, but it often just swaps out one ruler for another while keeping the underlying logic of power. It ends up, as it says, wearing the same crown.
In this line, it just brilliantly illustrates the core critique. Whether you're trying to argue with the old system or trying to burn it to the ground, you're still letting it define the rules of the game. Your actions are dictated by the very thing you're fighting, which keeps you trapped in its orbit, or as the text puts it, bound by its gravity.
So this brings us to the main event, the proposed third way forward. It's a concept called supercedence, and the philosophy behind it is, honestly, elegantly simple. You outgrow the old systems, you don't overthrow them. So here's the crucial point. Stop fighting. Stop pouring all your energy into this battle against an order that's already dug in. Instead, you redirect that energy toward building something new, something better, right alongside the old stuff. The goal is to make the new alternative so good, so compelling, that the old system just becomes a relic. This quote just clarifies the whole concept with perfect precision. It's not about fixing what's broken or fighting it. It's about a deliberate, focused process of making something obsolete by creating its successor.
I love this line because it completely reframes the main act of change from one of opposition to one of creation. It shifts the whole focus from what's broken to what we can build, from protest to production. That's a fundamental shift in strategy and in mindset.
All right, let's move on to strategy and see how this would actually work in practice, according to the sources. How do you even go about replacing an entire system?
So the strategy is laid out as this deliberate, step-by-step process. First, you build new parallel structures, and this part is key. You don't bet on just one, you launch a bunch of different experiments, so if any single one fails, it doesn't sink the whole project. You actually embrace that failure as a way to learn, and you just keep building until your new options are so much better that people voluntarily walk away from the old crumbling systems. One of the most radical ideas in this whole philosophy has to be this concept of the right to fail. In our world today, failure is treated like an endpoint, something to be avoided at all costs. But here, it's completely reframed as essential data. It's positioned as the only way to truly innovate and discover something new, to evolve beyond those predictable, pre-programmed solutions of the old world. Okay, so if that's the strategy, what's the ultimate vision? What's the end game? What kind of world would this process of supercedence actually create? The answer, according to the manifesto, is something it calls the universal commons. Now, this isn't about just installing some new ideology. The universal commons is imagined as a shared foundation for all of humanity, one that gets us beyond the old divisions of nation or class. And just check out the huge shift in values here, from ownership to participation, and from power to possibility. The goal is to create a whole new playing field, one that's based on cooperation and shared creativity. And this quote right here, it just captures that profound ethical shift at the heart of this entire philosophy. It's a move away from that zero-sum game of winners and losers. The goal isn't to conquer the old world, but to create a new one that's so vital and effective that it simply makes the old one obsolete.
And this is where the Declaration leaves us. It turns this huge systemic theory right back onto each of us, framing it not as some distant utopia, but as an immediate, personal invitation. It's such a powerful final thought, suggesting that maybe the most radical act isn't tearing something down, but deciding what you're going to build, starting right now.